That's what I'm saying. Like I feel like maybe this is just a way to figure out how to run up the bills so that then you can go, look, I made you so much money.
I don't think it's like that, Tarun. I think it's
I like that conspiracy though.
I like that.
So the question is, what venture fund is going to hire Gensler? That's the big question.
And they seem to hire all the regulators.
You think Andreessen's going to hire Gensler?
Well, I just mean look at how many regulators they've hired.
$100 million solo GP fund. It's Gensler Ventures coming to you in 2026.
I think actually all the big funds would probably band together and fund him just to get him to stay out of politics.
That's what I'm saying. This might be a genius ploy on his part, and you're all not thinking deep enough about it.
Not a dividend.
It's a tale of two clans.
Now, your losses are on someone else's balance sheet.
Generally speaking, airdrops are kind of pointless anyways.
Unnamed trading firms who are very involved.
I like that ETH is the ultimate concept.
DeFi protocols are the antidote to this problem.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chopping Block. Every couple of weeks, the four of us get together and give the industry insider's perspective on the crypto topics of the day. So quick intros. First, we've got Tom, the DeFi maven and master of memes.
Hi, everyone.
Next, we've got Robert, the crypto connoisseur and czar of Superstate.
Howdy.
Next, we've got Tarun, the Giga Brain and Grand Poobah at Gauntlet.
Yo.
And finally, I'm Haseeb, the head hype man at Dragonfly. We are early stage investors in crypto, but I want to caveat that nothing we say here is investment advice, legal advice, or even life advice. Please see choppingblock.xyz for more disclosures. So it has been another very eventful week. Tarun and I were just in Dubai for Token 2049, which was basically like an end of the world situation going on over there. I don't know if anybody followed what was happening on Twitter, but there were insane storms that beset Dubai, or just generally around that area in UAE and some of the neighboring countries. Most people flew in early part of that week, and then Tuesday, which is actually the same day that I flew in, a crazy storm flooded Dubai. It was, I think, 2 years worth of rain in about 24 hours. All of the streets got flooded. A bunch of people who were actually on my flight. So I had a driver that was waiting for me when I arrived because I was worried about what was going to happen with the floods. I was supposed to go to Abu Dhabi after I landed, which was like a couple hours. I was like, you know what, never mind. I'm just going to go to my hotel. Like, this kind of seems really dicey. People who were on my same flight, who were just behind me, they had to wait multiple hours to get a taxi. And to get, it took me 15 minutes to get to my hotel. It took the people who were on my same flight, I was texting with them during the day, it took them 6 hours to get from the airport to the hotel, same hotel that I was staying at. And they were like, they're fjording through like flooded tunnels and cars were floating through insane, it was total fucking apocalypse stuff. It was crazy. Tarun, you had an ordeal when you were getting in, right?
Yeah, so I like you saw the weather and was like, I'm going to reserve a car. And then instead, because I was like, this city, I bet you if it rains too much, like Uber drivers all crash everywhere. It was like Texas in the snowstorm. And so it turned out there were other people who made the same decision as me. And unfortunately, we landed later than you, so we didn't get our cars. So the car service company, rented a bus. And this bus took about like 5 or 6 hours to drive. It would normally take like 20 or 30 minutes. But the best part about it was I spent my bus journey sitting next to one Anthony Scaramucci. And it was a very funny ride because we get almost all the way from the airport to like where all these hotels are. And everyone's like excited. We're like, finally, it's done. Mr. Scaramucci does not feel that way. He gets off at the first stop and he says, I'm going to get a cab back to the airport after we've fjorded through tunnels, as you put it, so that I can leave right now. And it was like,
wow.
But all I gotta say is he was very nice. I was like, first of all, I was just not expecting to end up sitting next.
What? Wait, how did he get a flight out? Like the airplane?
I have no
planes
clue.
were getting
I have
diverted.
no clue what happened after he left the bus. That's above my pay grade. But I will say that was very funny that after already conquering the thing, he wanted to U-turn.
That's nuts.
That's what you like. You want a contrarian fund manager,
Yeah.
Well, he's also very good at exiting, right? That's his thing. Like Trump campaign, markets, FTX. He's good at getting out and moving on to the next thing. So you got to respect that.
Well, it's also funny to me. He's like coming to conferences and like still,
Still hustling.
doing that type of stuff. Still hustling.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I was surprised. Okay. I will just one more note about like just the aftermath of all this. So a bunch of venues got flooded. So pretty much everything that was scheduled. So the main conference was to start on Thursday, but like Tuesday and Wednesday, everyone had all these other events and lunches and kind of pre-conference side events. Everything got canceled. So many venues got flooded. A bunch of people who I knew who lived in Dubai, like their houses got flooded. Water was seeping in through the windows. It was just total mayhem for everybody in the city. Even the hotel that I was staying in, which is a nice hotel, like the ground floor of the hotel, I was on the third floor. Ground floor got flooded, so those people had to like move rooms or just like live in a flooded hotel, I guess. Like the ceiling was dripping, so if you were on the top floor, you were also getting issues with the rain. It was so insane. Like I did not think that was even possible in a city of this stature, like Dubai. And then the next day, it took a little while for the streets to clear up, but basically the city was like bifurcated, where certain parts of the city were still basically underwater, and certain parts of the city were traversable, right? So like the part of the city that I was in, you could get around within that area, but anybody who was like downtown, you were just like, I can't see you today. Maybe I'll go up there on Thursday or Friday when the streets clear up. And so like if you drove going through downtown or like going to downtown, there were just abandoned cars, like Rolls Royces and like, Lamborghinis that were just like, they'd just been abandoned because they were just floating. They were like, fuck it, I'm just leaving.
I also think a hilarious thing is I was reading some articles about how Dubai's not like covering, like no one gets real insurance there. And so a lot of those cars may not be covered in any way, shape, or form. So you might as well write them off as a complete loss.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think anyone is insuring water damage in Dubai.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And anybody who's a water insurer is out of business. So that's game over for them, because the amount of property damage in that city was absolutely nuts. And I'm sure there's gonna be like mold problems and stuff from all these buildings that have had.
I mean, I thought it was also
everywhere.
hilarious that the government was like, "Oh, you don't talk about it on social media," but then they were like, "We're building a 60 billion dirham drainage system or something."
Well, they said specifically, so I mean, UAE, it's a kingdom, right? So it's not, it's obviously they're kind of restrictive on what you can do there. But so they immediately announced that it is illegal to tweet or put anything on social media implying that the storms were caused by cloud seeding. So there was somebody who I heard of, I don't know if this is true, but I heard that there was like some tourist who basically was like on Instagram talking about, oh, it's because of cloud seeding, and they were thrown in jail. Because they couldn't, normally they would deport you, but they can't, there are no flights, right? They can't deport you. So they just threw her in jail until like the plane started going again. Anyway, I don't know if this is true, but this is what I heard.
How was the conference though?
How was the conference? The conference, I was expecting.
Notice that we've said nothing about the conference.
Yeah. No, so I will say I was expecting that the conference itself, like it was a stacked conference. I was really surprised the number of heavy hitters who were attending this conference. It was like almost everybody was there, besides obviously the two of you, because you're both lazy. But everybody else was there.
Well, we made the right call. We avoided.
Clearly.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was thinking about not going. And I remember I was in our Slack talking about like, oh, I'm going to delay my flights. Like, kind of seems dicey. There's like all this weather shit. And then, Iran and Israel are kind of fighting. And I don't want to be in the neighborhood because maybe the airspace is going to get closed. And everybody I spoke to, I was like, hey, I'm thinking I might cancel my flights and not go. And they were like, what? You're the only one who's not going to go? Like everyone else is going? And I was like, oh, maybe I'm an idiot. Like, am I just paranoid? It's classic VC move is that I asked everyone else what they're doing and nobody else was canceling. And I was like, oh, I guess I should just go. And I absolutely the wrong move. I should have just fucking followed my gut and canceled. And then that weekend, Israel retaliated against Iran, which is exactly what I was worried about. And I was lucky my flight was a day after. But if it was, my flight would have been canceled because the airspace got closed. So, but anyway, the conference itself was actually pretty good. Like I was surprised how many people showed up and like still kind of, everyone was there. You were kind of stuck. So
and
you couldn't move.
hats off to Alex, the organizer.
Yes.
And others, because like, I don't know how they pulled that together given all the flooding and stuff. And I feel like they like somehow by the seat of their pants, somehow were able to pull it off, but like they worked their asses off to get it to even happen after Gilgamesh level flood. So
yeah, it was kind of like I was a little worried that it was going to be like Crypto Fire Festival, where just everything was kind of in shambles.
No, it was
like
Crypto
food was
Burning
destroyed,
Man.
and
It was more like
Burning Man is Crypto Burning Man.
No.
This is a bull market.
This is more like fine, Middle Eastern desert, more authentic Burning Man.
Yeah, but UAE has its own flavor of degeneracy, right? So there was this big fight, this thing called Crypto Fight Night that I actually went to, where Ansem, who I was on a panel with him talking about meme coins, Ansem fought some crypto influencer guy named Barney, who I'd never heard of. Got his ass whooped in the ring. He ended up crashing the price of Whiff, apparently. Like the moment that he started getting hit, like he had no ability. He did not train or something. I don't know. It was like kind of embarrassing to watch him in the ring because he was the headliner. And so I was like there and I was kind of like, oh man, why? I don't know. This is like very depressing to see all these crypto influencers just like beating each other up in a ring. And they're all, not.
This is a very Dubai thing too. Like
exactly.
Like,
it's kind of like you have like your tigers that you keep in like your little ranch over here, and then you've got like, oh, let's pay the crypto influencers to just beat each other up in a ring, and then we'll fly them out for that.
But my favorite thing was it was sponsored by Bonk. All of the boxing gloves had Bonk.
Yes, I was like, what the fuck? How does Bonk have this much of a marketing budget? I don't understand. I thought it was a meme coin.
BonkBot makes a lot of money.
No, Bonk is a revenue-generating meme coin. It is.
So BonkBot is the Telegram bot, right? That you can use to trade and like.
Which charges.
But I didn't realize. Yeah, I didn't realize that it was owned by Bonk, the meme coin, or team or something. I guess the foundation or something. I don't know. I don't assume that they have I don't know. I don't know if they have a buttoned up structure in that way. But,
new paradigm, Haseeb. There are no foundations. I love you.
There are no foundations. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Anyway, so yeah, that's the recap on Dubai. I'm finally back in civilization. Very relieved to be out of there. But yeah, it was an experience. The interesting thing. So this was all happening right around the time of the Bitcoin halvening. So that is kind of the big story of this week. The Bitcoin halvening, for those who do not know, is every 4 years, Bitcoin supply cuts in half. So when we talk about Bitcoin being deflationary,
not the supply.
Bitcoin supply issuance. Bitcoin supply issuance. The rate of issuance, the inflation rate of Bitcoin.
I was about to say, this is a bad rebasing coin.
Sorry. So ever since Satoshi Nakamoto originally programmed Bitcoin, there was basically a rule that roughly every 4 years, the issuance rate of Bitcoin cuts in half, meaning the block reward that you get cuts in half every 4 years until the year like 2100 something, at which point there is no more new Bitcoin being minted. And so that's what we mean when we say that Bitcoin is deflationary. Technically, it's disinflationary, meaning the inflation rate is going down every single year. So that halvening happens every 4 years on the dot, and this was the fourth halvening. So it's been 16 years basically since Bitcoin started, and therefore the inflation rate and the mining reward cut in half one more time. So this was widely anticipated because Bitcoiners love to talk a lot about the halvening as being a very bullish event for Bitcoin. The theory of why the halvening is bullish always been a little bit of a mystery to me, and I'm going to show my cards here that I'm a halving nihilist. I don't think the halvening matters, but Bitcoiners will say that the halvening is a very bullish event. They will draw all these charts and they'll show, roughly a few months after the halvening is usually an all-time high and something. I don't know. I don't totally follow the arguments. But the halvening happened. I think it was Friday or Saturday, depending on what time zone you're in, that the halvening took place.
Yeah, 420.
420. Okay, 420 halvening. Just as Satoshi wrote it up, and the Bitcoin price has not really done a ton. It seems to mostly have tracked macro. So thoughts? Bitcoin halvening. Was it real? Is it bullshit? Are we waiting 3 months for the Bitcoin halvening to happen? Is it priced in? That's the. Is it priced in, or do you have to? I don't know.
Okay, let me ask one technical question for anyone who knows the answer. Maybe none of us know the answer. Is it 4 years based on like a Unix time, or in the actual Bitcoin software, or is it based on an expected number of blocks based on expected block time?
It's number of blocks.
Expected blocks.
Yeah, it's number of blocks.
Number of blocks. It's like the difficulty adjustment deals with the time delay and then the actual halvening blocks.
So it's not every 4 years. So to be clear,
it's close every 4 years. On average, every 4 years.
Approximately.
With pretty high certainty, right? Because like over that long a period of time, it's just going to average out to basically be 4 years.
But approximately.
Okay, approximately.
Years. Yeah. Okay. So I mean,
are we having a accuracy versus precision?
No, not on this. Not on this show. We'll save that debate for offline. All right. So my initial take is like the very midwit take on the halvening, which is all things equal, it's both good and bad, right? So the security budget of Bitcoin gets cut in half. In that, if the price of Bitcoin stays the same for an extended period of time, then there's really like less incentive to secure the network. But on the other side, there's half as many coins being minted per day, which are being sold. And from a technical perspective, there's fundamentally less of a gravity on the price of Bitcoin because miners are in the business of selling, right? They are good at electrical engineering and they make Bitcoin. In order for them to actually achieve a profit, they have to sell the Bitcoin or hedge it in some way that sells the Bitcoin. And so less block reward, less selling. And so selling has gone down. I mean, due to miners mining Bitcoin, it's a drop in the ocean compared to the total market for Bitcoin and like how many people want to buy or sell on a given day. But like directionally, there is less gravity to the price. And so I think it's generally like a good thing.
So are you a halving realist or are you a halving nihilist?
I'm a realist. I actually do think there is an impact to it.
You think it wasn't priced in?
Oh, I definitely think it was priced in, given that.
Okay, that's what I mean when I say a realist. Do you think it's priced in or not?
I think it's priced in. I think it is good for the price of Bitcoin. I think it's priced in like the near term, like, how far can people...
Do you think it was priced in like a week before the halvening, a month before the halvening, a year before the halvening?
2 weeks.
Okay, do you think 2 weeks before the halvening it got priced in, but 3 weeks before the halvening it was not priced in?
Well, it's a gradient. It's not a binary thing, right?
Okay. It was gradually getting priced in 2 weeks before, but then like it...
Yeah, mostly
sort
priced in 2 weeks before.
Okay. Tarun, what's your take?
So the reason I'm taking the other side is actually because there was this very big launch of a standard called Runes on Bitcoin, which led to the largest ever transaction fee block. I think it was like almost 40 BTC in transaction fees, which is much higher than the subsidy, which is what got cut in half. And so I think it wasn't priced in because no one knew how much demand there would be for runes right around the halvening. Now that's a very tongue-in-cheek answer because that's kind of nothing to do with the halvening. But the idea that the Bitcoin transaction fees were higher than the block reward, multiple for like a non-trivial percentage of blocks post halvening, is more a sign that the like security budget thing, like in the sense that the halvening is a religious event for Bitcoin maximalists.
And people have found ways to add new things around each religious event to increase the net fees around that time, then maybe that will be a counterbalancing force, but it's sort of more random than the halvening itself. So hence it's very hard, it becomes harder to price in.
Yeah. So, okay, we'll talk about runes in a second, but runes is only about a day of crazy transaction volumes.
But my point is like include now that people know that there's like this like doing a launch on halvening day is like the best time to do something on chain. I think this is not an undone. This won't go backwards. Instead, we're going to get all sorts of weird stuff happening, and it becomes too hard to predict.
We'll see in 4 years. I mean, if you're going to,
it's kind of like, okay, there's like Black Friday is like one day a year that a bunch of people go shopping, but that's not that's not enough to offset what's happening on the halvening side.
I was just trying to find the closest to rational. It's not priced in thing I could find.
I think the only it's like the most obviously predictable supply shock ever, and I think to Robert's point too, we're talking really a minuscule amount of Bitcoin that's being produced these days compared to exchange volumes, compared to ETF inflows, things like that. Really, I think the reason why you could argue that is bullish is because it just creates a news event for Bitcoin. Every single Bitcoiner is on network television, on mainstream press, talking about the halvening, getting it back in the news cycle. And short of that, there aren't really that many opportunities to talk about Bitcoin unless the ETF is launching or something else is happening. But usually you're talking about the price. And so I think that is really the story is it's just reflexive and it's an opportunity to talk about Bitcoin, which itself is maybe bullish for the price of Bitcoin.
Right, but everyone knows that people are going to be on TV talking about the halvening, right? So it's not even like that's
but most people
not
don't
something that you could
this.
price in.
Most people don't follow this in our crypto.
But the people who are buying,
sphere,
right? But the question is, who is setting the price for Bitcoin, right? Who's the marginal buyer of
the
Bitcoin,
marginal,
which is ultimately the person who sets the price.
Well, one, it's global, right? It's not like I don't think of it in terms of like who's watching like U.S. business television. Like it's global.
But the halvening is event covered worldwide.
Yeah.
So okay, it sounds like then you're saying that it's not priced in. Because people who are buying Bitcoin aren't paying that much attention, and it's only nerds like us who even know that the halvening is happening. So it sounds like, Robert, you are implying the halvening is not priced in.
I think it's mostly priced in. Let's go with mostly.
Okay,
I don't think
that contradicts what you just said. You just said that, look, it's only us who are paying attention, most people are not, therefore it's not priced in. So what do you think? Do you think it's priced in or not?
I don't think of these things as binary. There's not like a thing where like everything about priced in, like in financial markets, is a gradient, right? So like some people like expect it, some people don't. It doesn't go from 0 to 1, like for any prediction market, right? There's a gradient. And so like my personal view is probably around like 2 weeks, most of the flow for people who actually like are involved in Bitcoin have like figured out that the halvening is happening, right? When it happens, yeah, there's absolutely incremental people learning about it for the first time in 4 years or the first time in general. I don't know how many of them are running out being like, oh, this is the reason I'm going to buy Bitcoin now, is because like of this event.
I think of it like kind of like a brand awareness campaign where like everybody knows that Coke exists and yet they still buy massive billboards and they sponsor a bunch of stuff. And it's like, why? It puts the idea out there and kind of incepts you. And I'm sure there are marginal buyers of Bitcoin who see people on Bloomberg talking about Bitcoin and maybe they're like, yeah, maybe I'll put 1%, into Bitcoin. And this is kind of what we see. I don't know if you saw some of the holders from the Bitcoin ETF were revealed this week. And it's kind of random. It's a lot of random wealth managers from all around the world who are putting, small allocations of their assets into Bitcoin. And, I'm sure maybe it's not those people, maybe it is some of those people, maybe it's retail investors, but it's a brand awareness campaign, and I think that alone is maybe good.
Okay, so if you analogize it to a brand awareness campaign and say, oh, it's kind of like Coca-Cola buying ads. Coca-Cola is going to buy ads, but still they can like affect the amount of people buying Coca-Cola. But Coca-Cola buying ads, like they can do a bad job with ads this year, right? They just have some ads that are kind of like, whatever. Or they could do like the polar bear and everyone feels warm and fuzzy and they're like, oh, I want to go out and drink some Coke. So like they can underperform or overperform relative to the fact that, yes, they're going to do brand awareness, but sometimes it sucks and sometimes it's awesome. And I guess it feels like the same thing must be true of the halving, is that sometimes the halving marketing brand awareness, people on TV talking about it, it hits and it's like, wow, actually more people are going to buy Bitcoin than we thought were going to buy Bitcoin because of the halving. But it can underperform, and it seems like maybe
but then
this
it's
year
not priced in. So
it's like there's a baseline of price in, but you can kind of do a better job than the median or a worse job than the median of what the market is expecting to happen with a halving.
But by this logic, meme coins are brand awareness for Solana.
I think meme coins are brand awareness for memes.
No, for Solana. I mean, like the number of people I talk to are like, oh yeah, you work in that crypto stuff, right? I downloaded Phantom. That has been like something I have encountered more in the last few months than anything I've ever encountered where people knew about crypto. It cuts across demographics and age groups much more.
Okay, so all right, I think we've betrayed a little bit our cards here on priced in or not priced in. One of the things that Tarun was alluding to was this new phenomenon called runes. So runes, created by Casey Rodarmer, who is the originator of Ordinals and inscriptions on Bitcoin. So he created this new standard, basically trying to create a better version of what was previously known as BRC20, which is basically a way to try to create a equivalent of an ERC20 token on Bitcoin. BRC20s, however, were super inefficient. They were very expensive. They were kind of a really stupid way to implement a fungible token on top of Bitcoin. And so Casey created this much more efficient standard that's much more aligned with the UTXO model that's used on Bitcoin already. And so there were a bunch of rules that were implemented around Rune. It was going to kick off. You could basically mint the first runes by taking a ticker. The ticker, there's certain rules around the tickers have to be a certain number of letters long, and there are only certain characters you can use. And so people could mint those tickers for a new rune. I think it's called a rune. Starting with the halving, the first block of the halving. And that's why there was this crazy, effectively an auction that took place in the first Bitcoin block post-halving of people trying to find the best tickers and mint these new runes and all this stuff. So that drove a crazy amount of fees on Bitcoin for about 24 hours. Since then, the activity has really died down. I was looking through the Runes Explorer, and it looks like a ton of them didn't really get minted out. Seems like most of them actually are not fully minted. I don't know, this kind of seems like a bit underwhelming. So there was $80 million in fees on Bitcoin on day one. And those fees have basically gone down to pretty close to baseline now, a few days later. So thoughts on runes? I've seen a lot of chatter about it online, but it seems like people have mostly stopped talking about it today.
I have not interacted with runes, so I will excuse myself
bearish
from this part of the conversation. Yeah, very bearish for runes.
Very bearish for runes. If Robert doesn't ape into it, that's very bearish. Let me ask, why did you not decide to buy some runes?
I'm not that active in the Bitcoin ecosystem.
That's why. It's just, not your
it's
vibe.
not something I spend that much
Did you do any
time.
BRC20s or Ordinals or anything?
No, not really. I've done
Okay.
a tiny bit of Ordinal stuff, but
Okay. So you did some though. You did non-zero amount, but you didn't. The runes is just not worth it to you.
I'll say this. I went into the deep research phase and of Ordinals and talking to people and learning about it. I did not do the same thing for runes.
Okay, got it. Tom, Tarun, did you guys mess around with runes at all? Any perspective?
Also dabble with Ordinals, but have not gotten to runes. Something about the whole BRC20 and runes ecosystem is very strange to me, where you're basically totally dependent on these off-chain indexers to determine the amount of the token that you have. There's no real enforcement of the validity of these transactions on Bitcoin itself. So it just feels very antithetical to, I feel like, what Bitcoiners always talk about and kind of what the ethos of the space is. And to actually we're going to be reliant on this wallet or this third party to allow us to trade these things, or to tell me what the balance of my assets even is. And so I really don't get it. And obviously it's short of having an application or something that this stuff plugs into, it is just meme coin trading. Not to disparage meme coin trading, but we've seen this before.
I do think the problem is I think Ordinals, when they first came out, where there was a lot of novelty, but now people have gone to the extreme of these very, the Bitcoin L2 space is basically a lot of fake L2s. None of them have the viability of I can withdraw my assets from the bridge contract in a very reliable manner, or at all in some cases, without a centralized third party, and or some extra trust assumption. And a lot of the Bitcoin L2 stuff, I mean, the ZK stuff is real because they're actually just posting the proofs to Bitcoin. That's kind of reasonable. But those ones are not live. And the ones that are live seem like three guys in a trench coat with a multi-sig. It's they're not three, but by three guys, I mean three mid-tier Asian exchanges in a trench coat with a multi-sig. And none of them seem particularly real. They seem like this merry-go-round Ponzi thing that it's the Bitcoin L2 space that feels just fake inside. I for lack of a better word, I don't want to get flamed now for saying that, but
you will absolutely get flamed, but it's all right.
There are some real ones, the ZK ones. I think are that people are trying.
Well, real but not live, right? So
real but not live, yeah. But the ones that are live are basically multi-sigs.
But they're sidechains.
Yeah, they're sidechain. They're sidechain. But that's fine if you call them a sidechain. But there's no data availability.
So I spent a lot of time on this when I was in Hong Kong a couple of weeks ago before I went to Dubai for the Web3 festival. And in Hong Kong, So the first thing I'll say, the Bitcoin ecosystem, very concentrated in Asia. So, a lot of the demand for BRC20s and Ordinals are actually not in the US or in the, kind of Anglophone world, which is, I think, a lot of the reason why a lot of this stuff feels somewhat opaque to a lot of folks who are living on crypto Twitter. Because it is just the case that most of the BRC20 Ordinals activity was happening in the Chinese-speaking community. And less so in the Anglophone
but
community.
Ordinals make much more sense. Like, you look at the code bases, I know what it's doing. I look at the code base for these Bitcoin L2s, and either it's closed source or like pseudo open source. I don't know what it's really doing. Or it's like I said, it's like an EVM chain that happens to have a multi-sig that you peg in and out of. Okay, we've seen RSK forever, right? It's like they're not L2s.
Oh, they're all the same as RSK.
I don't understand how these people.
So here's the thing. I was in Hong Kong and I met a ton of people who are very big into the Bitcoin L2 ecosystem. And it was very curious for me because almost everybody I know on the Western side thinks the Bitcoin L2s are bullshit and basically did not invest in almost anything, right? A few Western VCs have invested into them, but overwhelmingly,
no. There definitely are a bunch. There are a bunch who have. There are a bunch who have.
The ones that are coming out of the US are like these very kind of academic, high integrity teams. That's like they all suck. Like the Bitcoin L2 game is not about like tech innovation. It's about gathering up lots and lots of Bitcoin from Bitcoin whales. And like if you look at like the granddaddy of these is Merlin. So Merlin they recently launched their token.
Merlin is unreal. I mean, you look at the like there's like single wallet with $1 billion of Bitcoin depositing into it.
Yeah. There's a huge amount of capital in there. That's basically, I mean, everybody in Asia kind of knows it all comes from a small amount of super Bitcoin mega whale miners. So in Asia, people love Bitcoin because Bitcoin equals proof of work equals mining. Everyone in Asia gets that, right? So lots of super wealthy OGs are miners in Asia. And so the Bitcoin L2 story, basically the reason why it's so compelling for many folks in Asia is that they want yield on Bitcoin, which sounds stupid because it's like, what? How does that solve that problem? And the answer is, well, points. You guys in the West do all this point stuff and you get yield on whatever you're putting into the points things. So we're going to create Bitcoin points and you can put Bitcoin in this thing and you'll get yield. And the miners are all like, great, I love that. I love my Bitcoin. I love yield. Here you go. Here's a big pile of Bitcoin. Give me yield. And it's
weird
working.
to call it an L2.
Right.
It's like
so
blast. It's blast as a service for Bitcoin maxis.
So here's the thing. I was talking to the Nervos team, which is like super OG proof of work guys, very legit. And they're building a Bitcoin L2 effectively. Okay. And so I asked them like, look, you guys are technical, like I talked to some of these teams and they have no idea what the fuck they're saying, but like you guys are really technical. How is this an L2? Right? This is not trustless. Obviously, Bitcoin is not validating any of this. It can't validate any of this. You're running an EVM chain. How are you going to validate EVM on Bitcoin? And the answer is that no. In Bitcoin, the word L2 means something different. In Bitcoin, L2 means that you are Bitcoin aligned. That's what it means. So if you're aligned with Bitcoin, you're an L2. And I'm like, wait, what? Wait, what? Then is RSK an L2? And he's like, well, I don't know. It depends on your definition. But yeah, that's what L2 means. So it's kind of like I was telling you guys, like fair launch in meme coins means that no VCs. That's what fair launch means for meme coins. In the same way, like the word L2 has just been reclaimed by Bitcoiners to mean Bitcoin aligned.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Does it? Does that make sense? That I feel like that does not make sense.
What?
Yes, because every phrase gets completely twisted in general to the point where everyone on the outside world doesn't really understand it. And
that is
that's
kind of
why
true.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, literally the term ERC20, right? Which now, at this point, like
ERC20.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
at least the first ERC20 knockoff, the TRC20, is bitwise identical minus for the one character of the T in the name. But the BRC20, not so much.
Yeah, like so. I mean, ERC20, like literally, there was a list of 20 of these Ethereum what's the word? What are they?
Well, they're EIPs. Yeah, improvement proposals, and they get converted to ERC. Yeah,
and they convert into ERCs, right? What does ERC stand for?
Ethereum request for comment.
Ethereum request for comment. That's what it is. Okay, yeah. So Ethereum request for comment. So you do an EIP, it gets approved or whatever, and then it becomes a request for comment. And that's what ERC20 comes from. And so now they're just everything 20. RC20 is just like means token in people's minds. And so they just copy this thing over and over again. Anything, even if it doesn't obey the ERC20 standard, they call it RC20 just because it just kind of sounds like a token. And so I can see that happening to L2, and that's kind of an interesting language on the move kind of linguistic phenomenon. At the same time, we have the term sidechain, which was invented in Bitcoin land. And there's a bunch of things that are still called sidechains in Bitcoin land, like all the stuff that, what's it called? The Bitcoin, what's the company that does all the Bitcoin stuff?
Stacks?
No, not Stacks. The centralized company that raised a bunch of venture. Blockstream, right? Blockstream has their sidechain that everybody points and laughs at, and is like, oh, this is just this is like a centralized sidechain. And it's like, oh yeah, but that's also what the Bitcoin L2s are. So what exactly is the difference? I guess it's like aspirational. I don't know. But it's vibes. Basically, TLDR, it's all vibes. At least that's what I've been told. I don't know. Are you guys looking at any of the Bitcoin L2 stuff?
We invested in one Bitcoin L2, which is a ZK
Oh, you did?
one. Yes. But a real L2.
Real L2. Okay.
It's like it's trying to build up to VM or something. How does it reveal
L2 thing?
Sorry? It's not
Is it a BitVM style thing?
It's its own VM, yeah. It's sort of like BitVM, but they have a specialized prover. It's like all the Blockstream Stark people who left, because Blockstream was building sort of this thing, and then no one wanted to stay there. So
I see.
It's called Alpin. I think they just came out of stealth like last week.
Oh, yeah. We spoke to them. Okay, Alpin. Yeah, I sort of count them in like the Western high integrity teams of like people who are making a real honest effort at building something good. Unfortunately, I mean, no disrespect to them, but I think like if you're not plugged into these Chinese whales who are basically plugging huge amounts of Bitcoin into these networks, I don't know if you can win this game because it feels very stacked against you, so to speak.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I feel like there's enough non-Asian whales, the Wences of the world who maybe will be the patron.
But those guys all hate this stuff. Like there are people who are like, oh, just wait for Lightning. Why are you guys doing this EVM bullshit? This is all like clogging up the chain.
I think people have learned that Lightning is secretly more centralized than your multi-sig L2 in some ways. So I do think that they're kind of turning the corner on that more than you think.
Is that right? It doesn't feel like that from the
What do you think the sentiment of What do you think the sentiment to Lightning is on Twitter? I would argue that it's had this extreme crash lately.
Yeah, I would bet it's actually just like not even that well understood. Like
Lightning,
no one really,
or the L2s.
Lightning, like no one's talking about it anymore. For the most part. Like most of the people who have come into crypto in the last couple of years might not even know.
Oh, true. Yeah. If you're a class of like 21, 22, you probably have, you've only heard of Lightning in passing.
You probably think it's an ERC20 token.
Wasn't there? What was the?
There is a standard. There's a token standard for Lightning.
Raiden was the Ethereum Lightning. So there was an ERC20 that was close.
Well, there were a couple. There was also all the state channels. L4.
Yeah.
Yes, but they didn't have a token. L4 didn't have a token.
They didn't have a token, but a lot of people who work there now have tokens.
Spank Chain had a token, and they had some great, state channel tech.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, actually, Funfair did too. So it's like the casinos and like the kind of unsavory stuff were very experimental. You know what they say about, it's the toughest industries that have to experiment with new technology.
True.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of tough industries, there's a big story this week about Uniswap that got hit with a Wells notice from the SEC. So let me explain what all those things mean. Uniswap, most of you are probably familiar. It's the biggest DEX. It's an AMM, completely decentralized. It runs with no on-chain kind of administration whatsoever. It's been around forever, run by Hayden Adams. So, not run by, I should say, founded by Hayden Adams. So the SEC, which we know both the CFTC and the SEC have been interacting with Uniswap Labs for quite a while, since, of course, Uniswap has been around since, I think, 2018 or 19. The SEC, it was announced on April 10th, issued a Wells notice to Uniswap. So a Wells notice is when the SEC is considering bringing a lawsuit or some kind of enforcement action against a counterparty, they are required by law to first give a Wells notice. It basically says, hey, we are planning to sue you. If you have any kind of contradicting evidence, that would lead us to think that maybe we should not be suing you or that this would be an error, here is your chance to present us that information. Almost always after a Wells notice, the response to the Wells notice doesn't end up causing the SEC not to go forward with the lawsuit, but at least gives the company time to sort of prepare themselves and potentially get their affairs in order effectively for what's to come. So now you might remember when the SEC sued Coinbase, as well as when the SEC sued Ripple, in both cases, when the SEC sent them their Wells notice, both Coinbase and Ripple front ran the SEC, went to the public, and basically started a PR campaign immediately saying, we got issued with a Wells notice. We believe the SEC is doing things unfairly and they're kind of, trotting over the rights of Americans to interact with crypto, blah, blah, blah. We're going to fight them to the death. And they kind of controlled the narrative, which I'm sure very much frustrated the SEC. At the time, this was considered to be a crazy thing to do. Like, this is not what happens generally. Like, normally in most other industries, when your regulator is suing you, you kind of, you slink away, you start preparing lawyers and, preparing to say lots and lots of no comment. And instead, Coinbase and Ripple sort of showed that actually you want to go on the offensive. And so far, it seems to have been largely effective, although, it's not over, but it's hard to tell. But it looks like so far, people think that, hey, it actually looks like this was the right strategy. Well, Uniswap has done the exact same thing. Once they got the Wells notice from the SEC, Uniswap went to Twitter and basically said, hey, the SEC is supposed to be protecting investors, maintaining fair, orderly markets. I think Uniswap does a better job of this. The SEC should not be coming after us. We are founded by American entrepreneurs. We've been following all the laws, blah, 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 effectively stating that, hey, we're going to fight this. We think the SEC is in the wrong. We have no control over Uniswap, the protocol. Basically come at me, bro, was effectively the energy that Uniswap was giving. The Uniswap token, Uni token, did take a hit on the day that the Wells notice was announced. I think it went down roughly 15%. But the industry really rallied around Uniswap under the belief that Uniswap is going to be a very, very strong defendant. Now, that said, we don't know what the charges are. People are speculating that these charges may be, being an unregistered broker or something, which, many people are saying that this would probably not stick because judges have been very unsympathetic to this claim. Coinbase, of course, in their case, had this claim thrown out for Coinbase Wallet, saying that, they had no custodial control. However, it's also possible they go after Uni token, claiming that Uni token is a security, in which case this might be the first battleground case to decide whether a governance token for something like this ends up being an unregistered security. So I'll stop there. That was a lot. What's your guys' take on the Uniswap Wells notice?
Well, none of us have actually seen, at least as I understand it, the Wells notice. All we've seen is Uniswap's response. It came from Hayden. There was a great blog post. I've read the blog post. I thought it was wonderfully written, where they framed really, the arguments for why A, Uniswap is important. B, it really shouldn't be a target of, enforcement when there's extremely vague and nebulous applicability of, historical laws to them, and see why, they think that whatever the charges may be, they're going to win. And I thought it was a wonderfully written blog post. Since then, there's been a lot of more sophisticated commentary coming on crypto Twitter and starting to be in the press. I feel like in one of the next episodes, once things start to come out to the public, maybe we should have on, a guest who's like more familiar with these issues. But I thought the response, and that's really the only thing that any of us on this show or on Twitter or anywhere have available, their response was great. And, I give a lot of kudos to the whole team at the Uniswap Foundation and the Uniswap Labs and everyone peripheral to it and like the community, because, I feel like they are ready and willing to champion and fight to the death on a case that they have an extremely good shot at winning, according to pundits online. And so, if this is the thing that creates case law where there's absolutely not enough or no case law, Uniswap is in phenomenal shape. If they'd gone after, some scammers, I feel like the SEC would be better positioned, but they're not going after scammers. They're going after a company that has been trying to innovate the right way for a long time. And I think they make a terrible target.
Hayden is such a genuine believer, right? He's done everything right. They've been probably one of the most kind of fastidious and upstanding teams in crypto, period, much less in DeFi. In DeFi, I mean, I don't know. I think he's a national treasure. And the SEC, it really feels like a huge, huge miscalculation in choosing Uniswap as the defendant here, right? Been much better going after like Sushi Swap or one of these other things that like just plays worse as a defendant, like they were kind of faster and looser. I'm sure they're not as well defended of a door. They don't have as much resources. They're not as beloved by the community. They didn't actually invent the fucking thing. Like so many people are like, wow, AMMs blew my mind. They changed my idea of what was possible in finance. Literally the example that people give of why DeFi is so transformational is Uniswap. And the idea that you would go after this guy and this team to say, hey, let's make an example out of how bad this industry is and how, non-compliant they are with like the laws that they're supposed to mind read, is just insane to me.
It is. I mean, there's, to your point, like, even if they're looking to build case law, because I feel like at this point, most of what the SEC is doing when it comes to crypto is about defining their political perimeter, right? They should be going after a garbage project that like forked Uniswap's code, behaved badly, stole money from people, and will have zero sympathy from a judge instead of going after Uniswap.
It is weird. I mean, I agree that it seems like it would be more likely to be about Uni than Uniswap, the protocol, or Uniswap, the website being a broker or something like that. But it is weird that Uni was not named as a security in the SEC's lawsuits against Coinbase or Binance. They had a huge laundry list of tokens that they claimed were securities. Uni was not on it, and yet somehow now they are getting a Wells notice that seems possibly related to the Uni token. Just very, very strange.
Well, but it was clearly not exhaustive, right? I mean, they only listed like 12 or 13 tokens total across all of the lawsuits, and there's Uni is like number 30 or something on CoinMarketCap.
Sure, but why sit on this for so long if nothing's fundamentally changed?
Here's my totally non-lawyer layman from the outside perspective. It's because there's a good chance the SEC will lose their case against you. And if it's a part of like the Coinbase case or whatever, and they lose and it happens, even if like the Coinbase thing is going through appeal and it's years and it's going to the Supreme Court, I feel like it wasn't named in there because they know that it's a risky case for them.
Actually, okay, I would
they
take
don't
the
want
other
it
side of
to
that.
influence like a Coinbase case.
No, this makes sense, but I think it's actually the other way around because, okay, when they go after Coinbase, right, they list these 13 proclaimed securities. Coinbase wins the case if they can prove that none of those 13 assets are securities, right? Because those are the ones that the SEC actually claimed. If they put Uni on that list and Coinbase wins that case, then now it has bearing on the enforcement action against Uniswap. And the SEC wants to win as many cases as possible, which means it implies that the assets they listed on the Coinbase case, they were not planning to pursue. So you put things on there that you're not actually planning to go after one by one. If you were planning to go after Solana and you put Solana on the Coinbase case, then if they win either case, it fucks over the other case, right? But if you go after independent enforcement actions from the ones that you list as securities, then one judge over here in this district could be like, oh yeah, I think this is fine. Another judge says, well, this has no bearing on this other case. So like, I actually think that Uni is a security and screw these guys. Whereas if the same question was litigated in two different venues, very likely the judge would defer to whatever the other judge did. Given that the same question was being adjudicated. That actually makes a lot of sense as to why they didn't list Uni, because they want to pursue it independently and they're not planning to go after any of the L1s because that's way too hard. Go after an L1 and it's like, well, but Ethereum's not a security. And if Ethereum's not a security, on what basis is Sol not a security, right? So it's very safe to go after the L1s. Very safe to name the L1s because you don't want to go after them one-on-one. Because if you actually, they take you to court, they're going to bring out Ethereum as an example and it's going to make the SEC look really bad. And kind of playing favorites. Whereas Uni is very unique, right? There is nothing really like Uni. And so Uni kind of has to go make a very different kind of shaped argument than the L1s could. That's my theory crafting of maybe why the SEC chose to pursue it this way.
I will say, one thing I thought was very funny was after this news came out, they just turned on front-end fees for all their pools. That was like a very funny form of rebellion where it's like, fuck you. Like, we're going to like, because they already charge fees on some of the front-end pools, and then there's like, now we're just going to turn them on for everything. I think there's like a great Dune dashboard of like their revenue from the front end fees like spiking on the Wells notice day.
Yeah, I mean, if I looked at it like the day it came out, I haven't looked at like the dashboard since then, but like, are they still doing like, $500,000 a day in income?
I think it was something. I haven't actually looked either since that day. Tom, you happen to have it handy by any chance?
I can pull it up.
I mean,
I don't think it was $500,000 a day. Are you talking about volume or revenue?
And fees.
Fees.
Yeah. No. It was nowhere near $500,000 a day.
No. Once, yeah.
No, it was like 12 mil annualized.
Yeah. No,
when
it was
they
like
raised
$500,000
the fees,
a month.
when
they
raised the fees, it reached over $500,000 a day.
Okay, so 411, 281K, 412, 380, 335, 332. I think it didn't quite go to $500,000, but it's like
yeah. You're right.
Hundreds of thousands a day.
It spiked though. You
what
can
is it
see
now?
the spike, it went from like 20 to 30K to like hundreds. Now it's
like 100K.
100K a day. Okay. So annualized
35, 36
mil.
Yeah. Okay. That's pretty good.
They have to have a legal case to fight. I just thought that was a funny form of rebellion. You're like, you're going after us already. Whatever. We'll turn on the fees.
Kind of true. Yeah, interesting. Well, I mean, they also know the content of the Wells notice, so it may have had nothing to do with the front end. So that may have been the basis on which they decided to do that. I don't know. So, I mean, this obviously will be a very consequential case for DeFi generally. I mean, again, we don't know the contours, so we're kind of guessing, but regardless of what this particular case is, it's definitely going to be monumental within the space. At the same time, the weird thing about it is that, Gensler's already fighting a lot of fronts. I sort of assumed that they were going to stop here because they have the Binance case, they have the Coinbase case, they have the Ripple case. They have a lot of resources that they're expending, and the SEC
they fired a couple lawyers. They fired a couple lawyers over that.
There was the whole there was the whole debt box thing where they got censured by a judge for gross misconduct in a different enforcement case. They were bringing in some random DeFi project. So the SEC kind of feels like they're overstretched.
This feels like a Hail Mary. This is like hey, election year, we might be out.
Exactly.
Let's just throw the Hail Mary. At least that's my impression of this.
Right,
it's got to keep everyone busy until the election.
Why though?
Well,
that doesn't make sense.
Maybe it's the only way to justify your budget or something.
Yeah, that sounds strange. I don't know. Obviously, if Trump ends up winning, Gensler's out. There's a decent chance that even if Biden ends up winning, that he replaces Gensler, given how unpopular he's been, even within the Democratic Party. So it does feel like it's a very strange move to be going after this. I mean, it's one thing if you go after some scam project and they're going to settle and it's going to be a quick thing, but he had to know that Uniswap is going to fight this, given how much resources they have.
Yeah, it's going to be a Ripple-like case where, both sides come out slugging.
And it's going to be years. This thing is not going to happen soon. So,
as usual, the only winners here are law firms. So you would be hilarious is if Gensler ends up going to the law firm that makes the most fees off these cases, because they're like, "Thank you so much for the donation."
Wait, Gensler? I thought the SEC uses their own lawyers.
No. So let's say there's 3 firms used for these cases, and let's say Gensler gets kicked out of office and needs a new job. Who do you think wants to hire him the most? The one who made them the most billable hours. And so maybe this is all a secret, indirect ploy for that.
Right. That's funny. Actually, after the debt box thing, which was when the SEC lawyers got censured for gross misconduct, there were a bunch of people on crypto Twitter who were calling. There are a few folks who are ex-SEC who've come into the crypto industry and have some people have fairly senior roles. Obviously, you'd want to work with somebody who knows the insides of how the SEC works. And a few people from crypto Twitter were calling for, guys, let's freeze the SEC. No more hiring anybody who's worked at the SEC, so that people learn this is not a way to get into the crypto industry. If you work for this institution, screw you. We're not going to hire you. I don't know if people are going to stand strong on that, because when you actually want to be dealing with the SEC, obviously it helps to have people who've been on the other side. And I imagine for Ripple or Coinbase, they are very, very grateful to have legal support from people who understand the SEC from the inside. But the spirit of it, I think, is quite sensible. Because, of course, many people who are working in government, they are kind of hoping that on the other side, they can end up getting a cushy, private industry job.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like maybe this is just a way to figure out how to run up the bills so that then you can go, look, I made you so much money.
I don't think it's like that, Tarun. I think it's
I like that conspiracy though.
I like that.
So the question is, what venture fund is going to hire Gensler? That's the big question.
And they seem to hire all the regulators.
You think Andreessen's going to hire Gensler?
Well, I just mean look at how many regulators they've hired.
$100 million solo GP fund. It's Gensler Ventures coming to you in 2026.
I think actually all the big funds would probably band together and fund him just to get him to stay out of politics.
That's what I'm saying. This might be a genius ploy on his part, and you're all not thinking deep enough about it.
Well, I'm sure the first deal he leads would probably be Prometheus.
I think the thing though is Gensler's already pretty wealthy, so this wouldn't be true. But if it was someone who was less wealthy than Gensler, I'd be much.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see where all of this plays out. We're up on time, so we're gonna have to wrap. But another fun week. We'll be back soon. Hopefully, by the time that we learn more about the particulars of the case, we're gonna have some more color on exactly what Uniswap is facing. But until then,
dry.
Thanks, everybody.